in here. I need to turn it towards you a little bit here. Here we go. Yeah, get over here. Get in here. Yeah. And let's see here. That's not what I meant to do at all.
What happened? Where are we?
We're down here. We need to go back up to the top.
There we go.
There we go.
We're back.
All right. Let's make sure we're on the different channels. Here. Oh, Karen's there, so I know we're on Facebook.
There's the light. There we go. I think that's going to work. Hey, Karen, Carol, Rhonda, and Bobby.
I always forget
Janice,
to turn the volume down and do that.
The Beans, Brent Smith from Maryland. That's awesome.
Who's from Maryland?
Brent Smith.
Brent
Do you
Smith.
know Brent Smith?
I don't know. Do I know Brent Smith?
It's a common name, Brent. Sorry.
That's the best we could do, huh? I'm sure it's slide a little bit. I feel like this one needs to be a little higher. What do you think?
I got it as high as I could. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I think you're right, but I don't know if we can. Do you think it's the computer? You can move the computer down.
No. We're good. Okay.
Well, I'm surprised. You figured it out. You figured out what I didn't try to do.
Did you try this?
Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah, I think that looks better when we turn the lights off.
All right.
2, 1.
Hey! What is up, everybody? Welcome to Bible class tonight. From the Brandon family. Great. Brent. We are glad that you're here tonight. Dana is in the house. Pam's in the house. Amy's in the house. Linda she says we're, so I'm going to say Joe's with her in the house as well. And Rylan and I are in his house.
Hey.
Which is across the street from my house. And our kids are... Your kids are
my
here.
My kids are downstairs.
Your kids are here. My kids are at my house. Barkley, the dog, is shut out from this room.
We might hear from him.
Oh, you know what we didn't do? We didn't plug this in at all.
Oh, yeah.
That was the one
We
thing
need a
forget.
mic.
I always forget.
I guess you guys can hear us through the computer audio, but it'll sound better with a mic.
Here, let's just plug this up.
Yeah.
Sorry, everybody.
I can do that for you.
I got it.
Okay.
All right. How about that? Let's see if that...
Check. Mic check.
Okay. All right. Is that better? All right. So we're ready to go. And man, there's always like one little thing. We forget one little thing. It wasn't on our pre-flight checklist. We're going to be in the Gospel of John tonight. We've been studying John for a good bit this semester, and all the way since January. And we are.
Thank you, Karen.
We're getting very close to being done with that study. In fact, we're going to wrap it up in the next couple of weeks. Okay. Well, that's not what I meant to do.
It's working.
I know, right? Stop doing that.
It's still working.
I'm not sure what's happening there, but we're going to.
I'm hearing it.
Yeah. All right. So
technical difficulties.
We're getting a little
bit
of
technical difficulties.
A little bit of an echo there. But there
Perfect.
we go. All right. So there we go, and we're ready to go. So anyway, we're going to be in the Gospel of John, and I want to share.
There's not many chapters left.
There's not many chapters left, but we're going to double back tonight.
Again,
we've
been doing that on Wednesday nights.
We have been doubling back some on Wednesday nights, but we're actually going to catch up tonight, and what we're going to end up being is it's going to be worth it. Okay, let me tell you. So we're going to start off in John 13. Okay. So if you don't mind, if you got a Bible, then join us in John 13, and we'll be there here in just a short second. Before we do, let's pick up some of the stuff that we did last week. We talked last Wednesday about a couple of progressions in the Gospels for some characters that show. You remember they're doing this?
Yeah, we're talking about Wednesday, right? Not.
Yeah.
Sunday was this week,
a week ago.
That wouldn't make sense.
Yeah, last Wednesday we talked about some particular characters that go through progressions in the Gospel. Nicodemus is one of those. He starts off coming to meet Jesus at night, and then kind of sort of half-heartedly defends him in one of the
In the
controversies.
middle. And then he ends up being one of the guys who helps him with like his burial, right?
Yeah, at the end, he goes to claim Jesus' body from the cross in as part of the burial with Joseph. And okay, so that's Nicodemus' story, and then we looked at Philip. And some of the different ways that Philip and Andrew too show up along through the story. Always showing other people to Jesus.
Discipling.
Disciple. They're engaged with that missional kind of part of the story all the way through. And then we ended up with the story of Thomas. Of course, what's Thomas's like most famous nickname?
The twin.
No, that's not right, Rylan. Come on. Yes, no? It should be. It should be.
The doubter.
The doubter, yeah. Doubting Thomas, right? But you're right. The Gospel of John calls him the twin almost every time we meet him in the story. And Thomas starts off going through this progression where we get to see how important it is for him to be with Jesus, and how much he prizes that. And then how much he even has to learn after the crucifixion about what it's going to mean to be to remain connected with Jesus even when Jesus is absent in the body. So that's all. You're right. That's all part of the deal with Thomas. So we looked at those progressions. I want us to do today. I want us to track down a progression of some of their characters.
All right.
Okay. Are you excited about this?
Yeah.
Okay. You looked afraid there for a second.
Who are they?
Okay. I want us to look at the rest of the disciples.
All of them.
Yeah.
Does Lazarus count?
Yeah, I think. Well, it depends. Who you count here, but we're going to look at, and this is not going to be in the gospel as a whole, as much as it's going to be a progression that happens with. In the second half of the book, from chapters 13 on into chapter 21. Okay, and there's this progression. It just blows my mind every time I look at this, Rylan. Okay,
I'm excited.
So, give me a basic definition of a disciple. What is it? Who are these disciples that we're talking about?
Well, they're the people that followed Jesus around wherever he went while he was alive.
Yeah, sure.
When you're talking about a biblical disciple.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And then there were like 12 apostles who were like even more special than the disciples.
Yeah, they're just called, and so, they're often called the 12. That's what, in fact, John likes to call them that. But yeah, so you've got that particular group that's given maybe a different kind of authority as well. But when we talk about the word disciple, it just means somebody that's following Jesus. Okay, and
like a student. Kind of,
yeah,
right?
That's
someone
exactly
who learns.
Right. Yeah, somebody who says, I want that guy to be my teacher. And in the biblical sense, that meant coming with him and following him along as he taught in different places, as he did different things. And it kind of meant it is a student, but it's more like a loyal student, right? Like you wouldn't think of it just, I took this one guy's class one time.
Yeah.
And, somebody that just shows up and heard Jesus at the Sermon on the Mount or something like that. That may or may not be.
Well, it seems to me like it connotates like someone who's following something that someone says.
Yeah.
So you don't necessarily have to follow them around, but if you do what they say, you're a disciple of that person.
Yes, right. Yeah, if you're taking on their teachings.
Yeah.
You're kind of it's a student with a layer of commitment. Okay, that's what a disciple is. So that's why we talk about being disciples, making disciples, forming disciples at Cedar Lane, because we want to be people who are committed to learning from Jesus and who take on that in our lives. That's a big part of our identity as a church. Okay, and so when we talk about this a progression of the disciples, I want us to see something that changes between them and Jesus over the course of the last part of the book. Okay. So let's start in chapter 13. Chapter 13 is a big shift in the book.
Now the last half of the book is really just like 2 days, right?
Yeah, it's correct. It's
pretty much like,
it's the day before when Jesus is arrested, and then is arrested.
This isn't like an overtime shift. You're talking about something that happens kind of.
Yeah, it's pretty. You'll see what we're talking about. So in there, okay, the shift in the Gospel of John comes like he's been teaching. He's been drawing disciples to him. He's been doing miracles and doing signs, encountering some opposition. And as the gospel tells that story, then the first part of the book is all about who Jesus is. That Jesus is the one who is sent from God. He's the Son of God. He's the one who is sent from heaven to complete, this task.
Like prophesied about, right? So he's the Son of Man, Son of God. He's the light, the water, all that.
Yeah, and he's all those things are like him providing more a fuller picture of who he is and what he knows, and that he can be relied on because he's the one who has come from God. We can't underline that part enough, right? Like he is the one who came from God.
From the Father.
Yeah, came from the Father. He has a special relationship to God, and he knows more about God. And all that is an important part of who Jesus' identity is in the Gospel of John. Okay? And then we get to chapter 13, and we have this sudden shift because it stops being, I wouldn't say it stops being about his identity, but it turns and says, okay, for those people who are his disciples, who have committed to seeing him as having that identity, okay, it starts to turn the tables and say, well, what's their role in the world, and what's their life supposed to look like? In the first part of the book, we haven't really heard much about like ethics and teachings about what you're supposed to do. And
like Jesus doesn't like send them out in John, does he? He does that in
the same way,
and so they're not doing this, having the same roles.
Not in the middle,
in some other of the other gospels.
Yeah, and like their role is to kind of go around with Jesus and kind of watch,
and ask dumb questions.
ask questions. But you're right. They're not. It's not about their ministry per se. And then we get into chapter 13, and Jesus begins to kind of turn things around and say, now let's talk about you. Okay, now you know who I am. Let's talk about who you are and what your responsibility is now as people of the gospel. Okay? All right. So let's start getting a picture about what the relationship between them and Jesus looks like. In chapter 13, we're going to read between the lines just a little bit, but when we do, it becomes pretty clear what the relationship is like, okay? Now remember, Jesus washes their feet. That's the way chapter 13 starts. He washes his disciples' feet, which is him taking what kind of a role?
Like a servant.
Right, exactly. And that's what's astonishing to them is that Jesus is putting himself in the role of a very lowly servant, okay? Lowest person on the totem pole in a household by washing their feet. Okay, but then when he gets to the end of that, he's going to talk about status in relationship with him and his disciples. And he says some really, really interesting things, okay? So let's look at verse 12, and we're going to follow from there, okay? So this is John 13, beginning in verse 12. Now, after he had washed their feet and had put on his robe and had returned to the table, he said to them, "Do you know what I have done to you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you are right, for that is what I am. So if I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. I have set you an example that you should do as I have done to you. Very truly I tell you, servants are not greater than their master, nor are messengers greater than the one who sent them. If you know these things, you'll be blessed if you do them. I'm not speaking of all of you. I know whom I have chosen, but it is to fulfill the scripture. The one who ate my bread has lifted his heel against me. I tell you this now before it occurs, so that when it does occur, you may believe that I am he. Very truly I tell you, whoever receives one whom I send receives me, and whoever receives me receives him who sent me." All right, buddy. So we get some, like I told you, if we kind of read between the lines, he says some things here that describe his relationship to the disciples and who he is, who they are in the relationship together. Okay. All right. So tell me the words that he uses to describe himself from this.
Like he's the master.
He's the master. Yeah.
Teacher, Lord.
Yeah. Teacher, Lord. Okay. Great. Yeah.
He is, let's see, he's one who sent the messenger.
He's the sender.
The sender
in this case. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Okay, so those are the kind of words that he uses to describe himself, and they're these are relational terms, okay, and they paint a picture of Jesus in a certain kind of relationship with his disciples, right? Okay, so to kind of give us a little contrast, what are the words that you might put on the other side of that fit the disciples at this point in the story?
Servants.
They're servants. Okay, what else?
They're learners or
students or learners. Yeah,
learners.
say
Disciples.
That. Yeah, disciples. Yeah.
They are the one that will be sent.
Yeah, they're the ones that'll be sent, right? So Jesus is the Lord or the Master, and they're the servants. Jesus is the teacher, and they're the students. Jesus is the sender, and they're the errand boys. Okay, they're the messengers. Okay, so tell me, if you put those things together, how can we describe the relationship that he has with his disciples here?
Like he has authority. Over them.
Yeah,
right?
There's a little bit of not a little bit. There's a very clear hierarchy about where they are in relationship to him. Okay, and this is voluntary on both sides. He has welcomed them to come be his students. He has welcomed them to come be his servants. Okay, and they have willingly said, we're in submission to you, right? We are willing to come and learn from you. We think you have something unique to say that we can't get anywhere else. So that's the nature of this relationship. Okay, and
that's kind of what we've always thought about Jesus and the apostles, right?
And
his disciples.
It's a very very healthy way of thinking about them. Okay, in the way that I would say it too. Okay. So this is where we start. Okay, we're in chapter 13, and we got this moment. And by the way, that the relationship is like that is why the washing of the feet story works so well, because it takes the things that they expected. Jesus is the one that's over us. He is the master. He's the the one in charge, and it flips it on its head. So it's not just that he's taking a servant's role, it's that he was supposed to be on top of the pyramid, and he's here putting himself in submission to them.
Yeah.
Okay. But he's doing that that's a teaching lesson. It's still very clear in reality who is in charge.
He's leading by example.
Yeah. And he's saying, right? And he even says that, right? If I'm the Lord and I'm the master and I'm the teacher and I'm doing this for you, you guys ought to be able to do it for each other.
Yeah.
Right. So the nature of the relationship does still have that sort of hierarchy.
And it has power because it's kind of a humiliating thing to do, right? Like a master wouldn't do that.
Yeah, that's right.
Like the student would wash the master's feet and take care of the master versus like it's a little bit humiliating for the master that's the student, right?
Yeah, very much so. And so this is the first stage in our journey. Okay, Jesus after this moment of washing his disciples' feet, he makes clear what the relationship is like, and there is this level of hierarchy. He is the Lord, he is the teacher, he is the sender. They are the servants, they are the students, they are the ones who are sent, and he uses all of that language. Okay? It's very clear what that language is like. Okay. That being said, we're going to flip over 2 chapters now. Okay?
To 15.
So we're going to go to John 15. So if you're following along in your Bible, look into John 15. And we're going to look at a very familiar passage here, but we're going to pull out some pieces that are hiding in plain sight. Okay? We're going to start in verse 12. Okay? In verse 12. So here, remember, this is the same night. This is later on in the same conversation. Now it's 2 chapters. Normally in the Bible that could be, 6 months. Who knows how long. But in John, in this particular part of John, this is further in the same conversation. Okay,
so they're still in the room having dinner.
Yeah,
or whatever.
Yeah. Right.
Judas has left, right?
Judas has left at this point. So the 11 are there.
At least.
11,
right?
That's right.
Could be more.
Okay, so here's the part that is going to be very familiar to you. In verse 12, he says, remember this is the second time he said it. He already said this in chapter 13. This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. Now, in chapter 13, verses 34 and 35, Jesus has already told them about this new commandment, that they have love one for another. In fact, he said in that part, He said, "If by this all people will know that you're my disciples, that you have love one for each other." Okay, so this is the reiteration of that command, which was just a little bit earlier in the night. Okay, so that's the context for this, right? All right. Now, like I said, that's the part that you've heard that's familiar, and then in this version of it, okay, that now that he's circled back to the topic, he's going to give them something a little bit more too. He says, "No one has greater love than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends." And we talked about that a couple of weeks ago. Okay, that it's the same command. He circled back to it, maybe because they weren't paying attention.
Yeah.
You know.
He said he was going to leave somewhere. Is this the one where he was like, and then I'm going to leave, and he had just given this new command, and they were like, wait, where are you going?
Wait, where are you going? That's right.
And so they completely just don't even listen to his first part of it.
And last time we talked about this, we talked about all that, how this is such an important thing, and it kind of flies over their head because they're so preoccupied with where is he going to go. And we talked about, on some level, the importance of a sacrifice that is, or a love that is sacrificial. We talked about how in the crucifixion story later on in chapter 18, the Gospel of John makes a point of showing how Jesus does precisely this, that he lays down his life for his friends, and he shows that he stands up for them so that the guards don't take them, right? All that kind of stuff. All right.
So is this like, has he already told them that he's going to die, or is this like him leading into that conversation?
Maybe it kind of depends on how you interpret it, right? Like he's talking about it, but they don't quite understand it.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So we've talked about all that, but here's the part that we didn't talk about yet.
Okay.
The word "friend" there is.
I noticed that this time.
It is worth noticing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. Especially when we circle back and we say, hey, just 2 chapters earlier on the same night, he made a real big show of saying that his relationship to them was Lord, teacher, the one who sent, the one who has these authority kind of pictures. And they were the ones who were the students, the servants, the ones who are being sent, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And you might say to yourself, Stephen, you're just kind of picking on one little word.
You can be friends with your boss. Right, Gerald?
Nice. Well played. But let me, please allow me to read a little further. And I want to show you that the choice of the word friend here is not accidental.
All right.
It's actually very intentional.
We're on the fence about this.
Yeah, we're on the fence, but we're about to jump over this fence, buddy. All right, here we go.
Okay.
No one has greater love than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. That's chapter 15, verse 12, or verse 13.
13, yeah.
Here's verse 14. You are my friends if you do what I command you. And here's the mind-blowing one, verse 15. I do not call you servants any longer. Because the servant does not know what the master is doing. But I have called you friends because I have made known to you everything that I have heard from my Father.
Okay. He makes it pretty clear.
Is that surprising to you now, looking into the progression?
Yeah.
It's mind-blowing.
Do they understand what's going on?
No, they never understand what's going on. Yeah, never understand it. But you see, all right, so think about this progression, all right? Servants, or we got Lord, teacher, sender. We have students, servants, students, sent ones. Okay, and then all of a sudden we get to here, and it's something it's kind of more equal, isn't it?
Yeah, friends.
In a way, yeah.
And he states, "You're not my servant anymore. I'm not calling you that anymore."
Yeah. You're not just my servant. So they get promoted, in a sense, right? Yeah. Like he's in a sense, and he tells them why, because he's made known to them everything that he's heard from the Father, right? And then it says, "You did not choose me." Which is kind of funny because it seems like they did in a sense, right? But here he says, you didn't choose me. I chose you.
Well, he did go out and find them. You know,
Yeah, well,
some of them.
Yeah, some of them, but some of them not. Remember, the first ones were the ones that were following John the Baptist, and John the Baptist said, "Look over there," and he said, and they went over there and asked him where he was staying. He said, "Come and see." So there is this like invitation, but through that all, that's him saying, he's saying, "You really are the ones that I've chosen."
Yeah,
you may have thought. I mean, he's kind of saying, you may have thought you just decided to pick me, and they did in a sense, but in another sense, he's kind of selected them in, and the reason is so that he can share with them what he knows from the Father. And now that he's shared with them what he knows from the Father, they're not just his students. They are friends of Jesus. And that is a remarkable bit of promotion. Isn't that crazy?
It's I never thought of it that way. It's really cool. So
yeah.
So now, what does that mean? What's different?
Well, Rylan, what if I told you we weren't quite done yet?
I believe that. There's more red letters.
There's a lot. Yeah, there's still some of the book left. We said we were going to go further, right? Okay, so now, what's really fun about this is we've read like all these passages over the last couple of weeks, and now you're like, no, that's not in there. But I'm telling you, if you just look one more time and see it, that's one thing I love about this gospel is that just if you keep prying and looking and meditating on it, like you said, you just meditate.
Yeah, it's
literature meditation.
Literature,
yeah, and the more that you kind of wade into it,
marinate,
it just continues to give you more. Okay, let's look at another passage, and this is the one that we actually read on Sunday. Okay, it's pretty awesome.
So
all right, so we're in chapter 20. We're in chapter 20. Okay, and this is in the resurrection. Okay, so everything that's happened before, that's before the crucifixion, the parts that we just read. In fact, those are the night that all that stuff that we just read is on the night he's betrayed. Okay, and we're going to pick up in let's say in verse 16. Okay, and this is in the middle of the story where Mary Magdalene encounters Jesus at the tomb. She encounters the risen Jesus. And Jesus said to her, "Mary," and she turned and said to him in Hebrew, "Rabboni," which means teacher. And Jesus said to her, "Do not hold on to me, because I have not yet ascended to the Father." Man, I love this part so much, Rylan. "But go to my brothers." Rylan, I propose to you that is another promotion.
Is this something? So he hasn't said this before, right? This is like a first.
This is a different deal.
Calling them brothers, and that word "brother" is not like Greek for like close friend, right?
No, it's brother. It's brother. Yeah. Okay, and so you might be saying to yourself, Stephen, once again, you're just picking on a word, and you're just taking that's what you're asking me, right? That's just colloquial. It's like sometimes we say, "Hey, brother, what's going on?"
When you're friends, you call your friends brothers.
Yeah,
right?
that's a
I
possibility.
think about Psalms. There's a friend that's closer than a brother.
Oh yeah, that's true.
So actually, brothers, I guess brother can be less than a friend.
It's not in this case, though, right? Okay. All right. So let's follow on and let's read the rest of what he tells her, and it's just this is a remarkable thing. Okay. He says, instead, what is it? "Do not hold on to me, because I have not yet ascended to the Father, but go to my brothers." And then he says, "And say to them, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God." Okay? And here's why that is significant. Okay? This, especially if we read it in the context of everything that we've learned so far in John, we start to see that something just amazing is taking place in this passage. All through the first part of John, okay, the first 12 chapters, the emphasis was on Jesus' identity. And his identity is he's the one who is sent from God. He's the one who knows God. Okay, he has a special relationship with God. And even so far as to say he's the Son of God. Okay. when he comes back from the resurrection, he speaks about his disciples. And something has changed in their relationship, not just to Jesus, but in their relationship to God. Okay? That's why Jesus can say, they're my brothers. It's not just because his relationship to them is changed. That's the friend thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? But a brother relationship isn't just like this.
Yeah.
Right? It's not just between him and them. It's between both of them and God.
So is this the point where like they've become adopted into
I mean,
family?
it seems that seems to be the way that it's speaking. At least if we're not going to use that language, okay, which I think that language is really good and fine, very useful actually. What we can say is their relationship to God has become more like, just like, his relationship to God. Okay, so that now, even in the word that's used before is the only begotten. Okay, and it means like the unique only Son of God. Okay, but that's something that is said about Jesus at the very beginning of the gospel, before all this. And now that we've had these disciples that have come to believe in him, that have listened to what he said, and now have placed their faith in him, the crucified and now risen one, okay, now their relationship to God has taken on this same kind of immediacy too. We talked in chapter 16, we kind of blipped in chapter 16 a little bit about some of what he says right before they confess, we believe that you're the one who came from God, right? And if you, everybody turn to chapter 16, and I want you to pick up on something that's said here that I think kind of points us in this direction, okay? Let's look in verse 25. I have said these things to you in figures of speech. Oh, wait, no, let's go back up a little bit. Let's back up to verse, let's say on verse 23. Okay. On that day, you will ask nothing of me. Very truly, I tell you, if you ask anything of the Father in my name, he will give it to you. Until now, you have not asked for anything in my name. Ask and you will receive, so that your joy may be complete. By the way, ask and you will receive. Like, that's one of the only phrases that we get that's identical with some of the stuff that's in the other Gospels, right?
Oh, okay. Okay.
And in Luke specifically uses that about the Holy Spirit. So, just for what it's worth. Verse 25, I have said these things to you in figures of speech. The hour is coming when I will no longer tell you in figures, but will tell you plainly of the Father. On that day you will ask in my name. I do not say that I will ask the Father on your behalf, for the Father himself loves you, because you have loved me and have believed that I came from God. Okay, so kind of bring that stuff in. Remember us talking about this passage a little bit? What's so significant here is that Jesus is describing to them not just something about his relationship to the Father. I mean, you've done a lot of that. Like the whole book has been about that. Yeah, in a lot of ways, right?
More than anything else, really. Like,
yeah,
that's been the main.
It's the driving theme.
Right?
Is he has this special. He hears what he hears. What he says is just what he's heard the Father speaking. Yeah. The way that he judges is the way the Father. What he sees the Father. The way the Father judges. The things that he does are the things that he sees the Father doing. Right. Yeah, all that stuff. I mean, that's been a major driving theme throughout the book. And here, what's happening is that Jesus is shifting all of that stuff which was unique about him, and he's beginning to put it onto the disciples. Right? He's beginning to show them how all those things that were true of him are now true of them too. That's what it means to follow Jesus. It doesn't mean to like bypass some like magic about the world and let us kind of get close to God, even though God doesn't really want us to be there. Okay. Yeah. What it is to come to Jesus, and through Jesus to learning from Jesus, we begin to relate to God in the same way that he does. We begin to see God as our Father. We begin to understand that God has welcomed us into his family. We come to understand that God has made his Spirit available to us if we would pay attention to it. Okay. We understand the truths about who God is because of the things that Jesus shows us, has shown us in his words and through his actions. And we begin, bits and pieces, we begin to have, to draw closer to a relationship to God that looks like the kind of relationship that Jesus has. I think that is the beautiful gospel of this book. The beautiful good news of this book is that Jesus isn't just like making it so that we play a game of pretend. I think sometimes Christian theology or Christians talk as if the whole thing with Jesus is that because of Jesus' blood, we're forgiven. And so God looks at us, and even though we're sinful, terrible creatures, he sees Jesus' blood. And so he says, like, God's almost tricked and goes, oh, that's just Jesus people, Yeah. And that's not really the case, right? Like what's true is that we come in, I mean, we receive forgiveness through the blood of Jesus. Okay. But there's also this element of transformation, so that God is drawing us to himself. God is inviting us to have the same kind of vibrant life in the Spirit that Jesus himself has. And at this book, in John, when we get into chapter 20, and when Jesus is, talking to Mary and say, go find my brothers. I get the sense that that's like this is like the pinnacle of what he's been pushing towards, right?
Yeah.
And that's what kind of brings up, there's one last kind of layer of that transformation. We're going to talk about it some on Sunday, but here, this is where we've really reached the push point of it. Okay. That everything really is different now because in Jesus' death and in his resurrection, something about the universe has changed. Okay. Something about the universe has changed. And now, those people that used to be his servants, in fact, and used to be his friends, even, now they are his brothers. Now we are his brothers and his sisters. We are part of the family of God.
So do we still think of Jesus as a master and a friend and a brother? I mean, I've tended to think of him as all three.
Yeah.
But what's the appropriate?
Yeah, and I think that's right. No, I think that's really appropriate, right? Because we kind of come into all those layers, right? We come through these layers of we still have things to learn from Jesus. Okay. And we do celebrate the things that he's shown us and the things that he's made possible. But in some ways, Jesus does all these things at once, I think, to us, right? So we come and we submit ourselves to God because we submit ourselves to Jesus because he is the one that knows more than we do, and he's the one that shows the way, and he's the one that deserves our submission. He's the one that we call him Lord, right? But at the same time, we believe that he has made us friends too, because that he's revealed these ways of the Father to us. And then when we meditate on the cross and the resurrection, we come to wonder at the amazing thing that God has made as part of his family. God's not just kept us as friends on the outside.
But we don't tend to think of ourselves as like being equalized with Jesus, kind of like what you were talking about with the friends thing, right?
Right, yeah.
And so it's I don't know if we should think of it.
Well, we're not divine. We're not divine.
Right, yeah, exactly. So we're not.
But we are bearers of the image of God too, though.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, so they're really, Rylan, I got to say, at the end of the day, I think it's both and. Yeah. I think there is a sense. Well, I'll tell you what. Actually, the gospel helps us with this a little bit. There's another spot. Let's kind of look at the end.
Okay.
All right. So in chapter 21, okay, we have this moment with Jesus and Peter. We're actually going to talk about this next week too. But in this last moment where Jesus is interacting with Peter, at the end of it, he looks at him and he says, "Follow me." Okay, and we're going to come back and we're going to talk about all this stuff next week. All right. But if he's saying "follow me," to me, that is also saying you still have something to learn.
Yeah.
Right. So Peter is still a disciple. Jesus is still the teacher. But I think in another sense, he's his brother too, and that's I think that's just a significant way of speaking about it. So I don't think that the fact that he calls us brothers, I don't think it says, okay, well, we don't have something to learn from
We don't
Jesus.
we don't still have the other relationship.
We don't submit to Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's just this other layer of it I think it's just beautiful and amazing. Everybody, I think there's a lot of gospel in that. And I want you to believe that too. And you know what? I don't know where you find yourself on that trajectory. Honestly, I have days where I need to be more of the place of saying, man, I bow before Jesus and what can I learn today?
And the teacher.
Yeah. I mean, it's always true, but there's certain, what I'm saying? There's days
days when you're just like, I need that Jesus as my friend, as my brother.
That's right. You need the comfort of that.
Yeah, you need to be comforted. That's right.
But then there's, we got to remember that this is part of their other progression. There's other times where these guys that go through the servant, friend, brother trajectory, that shift, they started off as just being people that were curious and seeking out Jesus, and then sometimes listening to him and not really sure what he thought and not sure if he was crazy. But they stuck with him. And because they stuck with him through that process, they got to a place where they were committed to being his disciples. And then they got to a place where they had developed this other relation. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's part of the whole. What we looked at tonight is really just kind of part of the journey, but there was this other part that was like it too. And for you guys that are watching, like you could be anywhere on that, right? And I hope that if you're on that place where you're curious, or whether you're on that place where you're beginning to listen more to Jesus, or if you're a place that you're a disciple, or you are celebrating the friendship of God, or you feel like you've come to believe in your place in God's family as a brother or sister of Jesus. Wherever you are on that spectrum, man, just keep following Jesus, right? Just keep following Jesus.
Follow me.
No matter where you are in that story, that's the secret, right? Is to keep following and keep listening and keep asking questions and sticking with Jesus. The word that Jesus used is remain in me or abide in me.
Abide.
Yeah. And when we stay with Jesus, he brings us through this progression. He's the one that kind of grows this stuff in us and brings it about. The disciples they didn't do anything to earn this new promotion. These things, right? They go from service to friends, not because of something they did, because of something he did.
He called them, and they thought that I don't know. It seems like a Calvinistic thing, election, because they did drop everything and follow him, right?
Yeah,
I mean, they did. There's a rich man that didn't do that.
Yeah,
and he left. So. They've elected to be with him, I think, out of their own free will.
And he asked them at some point, are you going to leave? And they say, oh, man,
no, we're not going
we got nowhere to go.
But at the same time, they're chosen by him.
Yeah.
As special, as holy, set apart, right?
That's right. That's the way relationships work, right?
Yeah.
That's the way relationships work.
It's not one way.
Yeah. Okay, so that's what I wanted to offer for you all today. If you have some kind of reflection on that and you want to post it either in a comment, or if you want to share this class and write a little reflection on it, I think that'd be really awesome. Also, I want to remind you, if you I've seen some of the posts of people with the little hashtag I've seen the Lord from Sunday.
I haven't seen that yet.
Yeah. I saw some really neat ones. Some people some of them were out in creation, or some of them were talking about the way they've seen them in certain people and things like that. So I would encourage you to do that if you've encountered the risen Lord, just like Mary did in the garden. Hey, use that hashtag I've seen the Lord, and let's share that news with other people too.
So the way that works, for those of you who aren't internet savvy, who are just doing this because you can't go to church anymore and you just figured out how to get on Facebook and watch a video,
and we appreciate that.
Yeah,
that's not a diss.
That's awesome. And this is how we got to do it right now. But what you do is you write a post on Facebook, or you upload a picture or something,
or on Instagram,
or on Instagram, or on Twitter, or however you're connected.
TikTok.
TikTok.
I know Lance Askins is on the TikTok. I know he loves TikTok. Yeah.
I'm sure Lance is on the TikTok.
Can't get him off the TikTok.
When you post that, you post the hashtag or the £, and then the words,
I have seen the Lord.
I have seen the Lord. All just one, no spaces, just the £, I have seen the Lord, after whatever you post.
Yeah, and then when you post it, you push turn, and by the magic of the internet, that £, I have seen the Lord, no spaces, all that together, that becomes a link, and you click it, and it'll start showing you all the other people that have made that part of their post.
It's really cool.
It is really neat. Yeah, it's a magical time
It is. He knew.
Hey, listen, we are grateful for your fellowship with us. We're grateful for the study that we've had tonight. If you have any questions, you're welcome to message me either on Facebook or through email. My email is stephenhovatter@gmail.com, or you can hit me here in Facebook as well. All right. So thank you guys. We appreciate it. Y'all have a lovely evening.